This man is extremely stressed right now. He stared at the number, jumped continuously on the taxi fare, then looked at the year again, the only dollar left in the wallet. When the taxi stops at an intersection, then he immediately opened the door and rushed out. But can run for a while. I just remembered Rhea. My bone scanner is still in the passenger seat. He quickly turned around, grabbed it, and then got out of the car. Ignore the driver. Run shoe network to subway station. The driver was crazy and stopped. The bastard stopped. Chris still ran like flying down to the train station. Tried to get on the last train of the day without buying a ticket, but unfortunately the bone scanner got stuck in the door. Then he started to move, so he was forced to let go of Tay. Chris collapsed, completely helpless and hopeless. Because of that scanner is his family's monthly living expenses. He called home to tell his wife he would be home late, but received an answer like lightning striking Tay. "I'm leaving, Chris. What are you leaving this house for?" "Did you hear what I said? I've finished packing my things and I'll give it to Christopher. Go now." His wife's sudden attack stunned Chris. The sky began to rain dust. Nature seems to be quiet, expressing the bad luck and gloom in his heart. Chris ran like hell home. The house was once filled with happiness, now empty and cold. Under the light he felt lonely and helpless. Harsh reality exhausted all his passion and perseverance for life. However, his life wasn't always like this. A few years ago, Chris spent all his savings to buy a batch of high-end bone scanners, become the exclusive agent in the San Francisco area. He used to think that this will be the turning point in my career. From there, you can step up to the pinnacle of life. But the boat of happiness has just set sail. Encountered great turbulence. 1981 America fell into a serious economic crisis. Homeless people can be seen everywhere. Quality though, your bone scanner's images are a little better compared to products on the market, but the price is twice as high. Now he hasn't sold a single machine. For THRE, the renter already owed 2 months of tax and was delayed twice. Car was towed away. There is still one VND ticket waiting for you to pay. Even your son. You can also only study at a kindergarten. Even the word happiness is written wrong. To maintain family life, so his wife has to work 2 jobs at the same time. Her temper became increasingly irritable. Chris also hasn't really smiled for a long time, until one day he arrived at a magical place. There everyone smiled happily. He stopped a man driving a luxury car and asked him 2 questions. "How did you do it?" "I'm a stockbroker." "You should probably go to college and become a stockbroker." "Right, no need. You just need to be good at math and know how to treat people. Simple as that. See you soon." Chris is naturally gifted in mathematics, more for many years working in sales. He has accumulated rich communication experience, so he came up with the idea to try this profession. Came home when I heard him speak, planning to interview at a securities company. Then his wife immediately let out a stockbroker. Are you dreaming? However, to change destiny, so Chris doesn't want to miss any opportunity to look more neat. He gave the bone scanner to a street artist. At the market, give her $1 tip, and continually emphasize this thing isn't worth that much. But as soon as I received the job application, Chris was surprised. Discovered Ra, the artist Kier, hugged his scanner. Ran away. Chris quickly chased Theo, run all the way to the subway station, but could only watch helplessly as she boarded the train. "So your living expenses will be gone. Go away." Chris was angry, kicking and punching the train to vent his anger. Cool it. Then Chris began to carefully study the job application form. Securities company. Every 6 months, we will recruit 20 interns. But in the end, only 1 person remained. In the educational requirements section, in addition to a high school diploma, there are 3 other additional items. But these things meant nothing to him. That night, Chris couldn't sleep. He began to hesitate. Should we seize this fragile opportunity or not? The next day, I was on my way to take my son to school. He kept telling me to sell the Kia machine, then go home. But after taking my child to school, Chris is in no rush to sell bone scanners. Take the job application directly to the company headquarters. Securities are not like other job applicants. Apply at the front desk. He gave the application directly to the human resources director. Want to make a good impression, but the busy director didn't give him a chance. As Chris came down the stairs, he happened to see a female street artist. Took out his bone scanner. He tried his best to chase Finally Theo. Caught her on the bus and got the device back. Christopher was surprised to see 2 scanners. After school, Dad promised to sell the machine, but now it becomes R0112. His wife saw this scene with a helpless expression. I don't want to hear Chris explain anymore. Do whatever you want, Chris. He tried to hold on to his wife. We will overcome this difficulty. Everything will be okay, okay? You've said the same thing before. When I was pregnant with Christopher, he also said that everything will be okay. So you don't trust me anymore, Sal. It's up to you. Care anymore. The wheel of destiny began to move at that moment. The appearance of the Rubik's Cube made it a gift. Loved by many people, then a mathematics professor can solve Rubik's Cube in 30 minutes was considered a very remarkable achievement, perhaps because Chris showed an aptitude for mathematics at a young age. So he almost solved the Rubik's Cube. And the Rubik's Cube also becomes the key. Change Chris's fate. Due to fierce competition in the securities industry, even though Chris had applied for the job, but still haven't received a response. To look for opportunities, he took advantage of his free time, waiting under the securities company building. Just like that, he waited for more than a month. Finally, one day, he met with the human resources director and hoped to take advantage of this opportunity to demonstrate data processing ability and your communication skills. However, at that time, the director was rushing to another location. To seize this rare opportunity, Chris lied and said he had the same score, so the two of them got into a taxi together. To make a deep impression on the director, Chris continuously introduces himself. Director seems to only focus on the Rubik's Cube on Tay. Didn't even bother to look. He saw the director fascinated with the Rubik's Cube, but could not solve it. Chris proactively asked if I could do it. You can't, no way I can do it. There's no way I'm sure I can do it. You can't let me see and give it to me. What a surprise. Chris quickly matched one side of the Rubik's Cube. Then he concentrated highly. Continue the challenge. With this seemingly complicated toy, even the driver couldn't help it. Look back. When the car finally arrived, he solved the entire Rubik's Cube. This scene made the director worthy. The director got out of the car and quickly left. Chris looked at the meter, which showed $18, then looked at his almost empty wallet again. He had to choose to avoid tickets to escape the driver. He jumped on a subway train that was about to close, but lost the fog scanner. Under the pouring rain, he called his wife, but only received news that she had decided to leave. He worriedly ran home, while Chris was feeling sad and great. Then the human resources director called. Notification: you can come for the interview in a few days. And asked him to write down the secretary's phone number for more information about the interview. At this time, Chris discovered there wasn't even a pen left in the house. He had to temporarily memorize the phone number, just mumbled and read it over and over again. Ran to the nearest store to find paper and pen. That night, Chris couldn't sleep. Early the next morning, he hurried to find his wife. I hope I can bring Christopher back to my side. 2 people. There was a violent quarrel in the street. But his wife was determined not to give in, to take advantage of your time together. Son Chris, don't even wait until school is over, but picked up Christopher early. As soon as I entered the door, the homeowner came looking for me because the rent was in arrears for 3 months. So the homeowner warned them, if you don't pay the rent, you must move out immediately. After Chris finished begging, finally, the landlord agreed to give me another week, but on condition that Chris must repaint his house. The next day, while Chris was painting the wall, he wrote on the wall the words, "Chris, you are so bad." Unfortunately, at that moment, the doorbell rang. 2 policemen suddenly appeared and took him to the station. Turned into because he has not paid the traffic violation fine. Chris had to write a book. As of now, the bank is closed. The police had to wait until the next morning. When the bank is open, only then can we verify book information. Chris begged the police to let him go home because his 5-year-old son was home alone. Furthermore, the next morning he had an important interview. But the police did not pay attention to his request. Feeling helpless, Chris had to call his wife. He and his wife promised to bring Christopher back at 6 p.m. the next night. He was then detained all night until the next day. After verifying review information, only then did the police release Mr. Ray. Leave the police station. Chris ran all the way to the securities company building. Finally arrived at the company before the interview. Everyone else was wearing smart suits, and he was wearing labor clothes covered in paint. When the director saw his appearance, then he was stunned and surprised. Anyway, he was the one who introduced Chris. Chris proactively stepped forward to shake Everyone in the boss looked dissatisfied. Haven't waited for the interviewer to speak yet. Then Chris spoke frankly. I sat outside for more than half an hour. Try to think of a reason to explain it to you. Why do I appear like this? Try to make up a story to prove that I have the qualities that you highly appreciate, such as honesty, diligence, team spirit, etc. As a result, I don't think Ra can do anything. The truth is that I was arrested for not paying the fine. Park the car. I drove all the way from the police station to here. Before being arrested, what are you doing? I'm painting the house. The boss clearly wasn't impressed with Chris, who only have a high school diploma. But Chris sincerely said I was that kind of person. If you ask questions that I don't know the answer to, then I will tell you directly that I don't know. But I assure you that I know how to find out the answer, and I will definitely find it. Chris's sincere words once again aroused the boss's interest. Then he asked Ro a new question. Chris, if there is one shirtless person coming to a job interview, and I ended up hiring that person again, then you think so, then his pants must be very special. Chris's performance throughout the entire interview can be said to be perfect, but then he knew that this 6-month internship is unpaid. This makes Chris hesitate, because out of the last 20 interns, only one was officially recruited. This means you have to sell all the scanners in Tay and go all out in the next half year to get the chance. Only 5% carry this heavy pressure. Chris returned home and decided to take a risk. He erased the words Chris had terrible luck on the wall. That afternoon, his wife finally brought Christopher home. He breathed a sigh of relief, but his wife announced that she plans to go to New York to find a new life. Chris agrees, but on the condition that Christopher must stay with him. This time his wife tacitly approved. Before parting ways, she walked into the room again and looked at her son. Once again, faced with his wife's departure, Chris felt helpless. He didn't dare to hold on and didn't even dare hug his wife to say goodbye. The future is unclear and life is difficult. Makes it impossible for him to be selfish. Asked his wife to stay. At that moment, he silently made up his mind, determined to build a career. Then he called the securities company. Agree to participate in a 6-month training program to reduce costs should the father and son move to a cheaper motel. On Saturday, Chris took his son to play basketball. Christopher excitedly told his father, "When I grow up, I want to become a basketball player, professional." However, Chris believes that genetics determines fate, because he himself is not good at basketball. So son, he is also not sure if he will become a professional player. These words hurt Christopher deeply and immediately lost all interest. Seeing the 7-year-old look on his son's face, then Chris realized he had said something wrong. He immediately told me, "Don't let anyone tell you that you can't do it. Even your father understands. If you have a dream, you must protect it. The 7 losers will want to tell you that. I won't be able to do anything either. If you have ideals, then you have to try to do it like that." These words are not just for boys, but also a word of encouragement for himself. The next morning, he took his son to sell goods. Bone scanner. The gloomy life finally has a glimmer of hope. Chris sold a bone scanner. This month's living expenses are finally available. Saw my son looking at snacks. I can finally buy it for you. But Christopher said obediently, I don't want it anymore. We can buy one of any kind you want. How much is this? 2 sous. At the same time, his internship also began. During internship, older not only have to attend company training sessions, but still have to learn a thick handbook of industry knowledge. To impress the boss, Chris took advantage of the TB break to proactively meet with the boss and take this opportunity to find out some of the latest industry news. We're chatting excitedly. Chris suddenly discovered Rod, homeless man with mental problems. Kia is holding it in her hand. It's the bone scanner you dropped in GA. Subway. So after saying goodbye, boss, Chris hurriedly chased after that homeless man. He focused all his attention on the man. Homeless, completely oblivious to the traffic situation. As a result, he was hit by a car. He completely forgot about the pain because of the shock that life deals. More painful than physical pain. In the end, he still couldn't find the other shoe. But you still have to come back to this company, man. I lost a shoe. Yes, thank you for reminding me. For being the only black person in the training class. So every day he not only has to participate in study, but also have to do all sorts of chores for the lecturers, like buying coffee or buying donuts. After work, he had to quickly go pick up Christopher, then take the subway and then transfer to the bus, crossed half the city to get home. After a period of training, he started trying to call strangers to offer to improve efficiency. As soon as he hung up, he immediately called someone else. I didn't even have time to put the receiver down. To avoid wasting time while working, he barely drank water for nothing. Have to go to the bathroom. You have to complete the workload, which usually takes other people 8 hours. Within 6 hours, to be able to leave work early and pick up my son. One day at last, he also made an appointment to meet a potential customer. That person has a few minutes to spare. After 20 minutes, Chris hung up the phone and immediately went to the meeting point. Hoped to grasp this opportunity. However, just arrived. The tour guide called him back and asked him to park the car. Before Chris could answer, the instructor left. Reluctantly, Chris had to help park the car. As soon as he used the key to open the car door, then the parking space opposite was occupied by another car. He had to drive a long way to find a parking spot, even though it ran very fast. But because it takes time to park, so he missed the appointment with the rich customer. To make up for this mistake, he decided to bring his son to Sari's house. On weekends, rich customer, touched by his sincerity, and very precious Christopher. Coincidentally, this customer planning to take my son to watch rugby. So I invited Chris and his son to go together. Near the end of the match, Chris mustered up his courage, introduced to a wealthy customer about the company's asset management capabilities. However, it is clear this customer will not have it easy. Delivered millions of dollars to a black man that he was new to, although cooperation was not achieved. But seeing my son so happy, Chris felt this trip was worth it. After the match, everyone else was in the VIP room. Everyone thought Chris was a friend of the rich customer, so I scrambled to give him my business card. In the 4th month of the internship, he was lucky to sell all the bone scanners. Chris thought his life was about to change, but a letter brought him back to reality. That's a $600 tax bill. Because he was 3 months late in paying, the government directly deducted all the money in your bank account. He went bankrupt again. Homeowner over and over again urged him to pay the rent. Feeling helpless, he had to go find his friend to get his $14 previously lent. But this friend used the excuse. Once helped him move house and refused to return the money. The next day, while playing with my son in the park, he saw the homeless man again, holding the car, his bone scanner. Chris hurriedly ran to get it back. If sold, this will be the living expenses of father and son in the coming days. First, he cleaned the missed scanner, then find a potential buyer. However, when preparing to trade, he discovered that the machine was broken. This is the only hope of survival for father and son. He nervously fiddled with the machine for a while, but it still has no response. Worse things happened again. When father and son returned to the house, they discovered my belongings were thrown out by the homeowner for not paying rent on time. Even the locks have been changed. Chris tried to get into the room through the window, but eventually gave up the idea. He decided to take his son first. However, Chris Topper couldn't understand what was going on, constantly asking why Sao couldn't go home, and pulled the door open while crying loudly. Listen to what Dad says. Stop, don't make any noise. This was the first time Chris got angry with his son. A homeless father and son arrived at the subway station. Christopher kept asking their father where they were going, but Chris couldn't give a real answer. At this moment, Christopher suddenly broke out. Speaking of a time machine, because I miss the homeless man. Crazy, crazy, crazy. Always called the bone scanner that way. Seeing that, Chris came up with an idea to tell his son that this is a time machine, can take them back to the past. So father and son started a time travel game. Imagine even living in poverty. I still want to give my son a sky full of stars. Chris took his son and hid in the bathroom of his gay house. Spread toilet paper on the floor. The father and son just lay down, but no matter how many lies, made into a fairy tale. In the end, reality will still knock on your door. Chris had to cover his son's ears with his hand. At the same time, stretch your legs and push against the door. The strong Chris collapsed in silence. In extreme sadness and despair, tears kept falling. The surrounding cold ceramic tiles, like the cruelty of reality, seal all escape routes of hope. After a rough night on the toilet, life must still go on. From then on, wherever Chris goes, he carries all his belongings with him. To avoid having to sleep huddled in the house. Clean it one more time. Him and other homeless people line up to go to the shelter just to ask for a free place to sleep. Under the impact of the Great Depression, the number of homeless people increased sharply. At this moment, a luxury sports car sped by. There was a beautiful girl in the car, seems unaffected by economic hardship. Church staff informed that there were only 4 sleeping spaces left. At this moment, a homeless person, suddenly Chun walked in front of him. Divine fatherhood does not allow him to step back. See, the situation is about to get out of control. Person in charge of the church decided to invite both of them out. I'm on time and I'm standing in line. I got off work and picked up my son. I arrived on time and we arrived on time. Kia Chun is strong. Fortunately, there was a middle-aged man standing next to him. Testify for you. Thanks to that, he was able to get a place to live. Although the conditions here are not very good, but for father and son, having a place to stay and shower is more than enough. After that, his son Ru slept and went to the place with the light. The mist scanner broke down when TIA, the first sunlight, penetrates through the window. He relied on this weak light to immerse yourself in the sea of financial knowledge. Life's constant blows. Not only did it not discourage him, but also aroused in him will and determination, more steadfast. During the day, he devotes all his strength to serving customers. When night falls, Mr. Lee walked tiredly, gave his son Chun wishes on crowded buses. Sometimes because I was in a hurry, he forgot his Captain America toy, Christopher's favorite. But he also doesn't have time to care. The punches of life don't let me stop to cry. Sometimes father and son were lucky to find a place to sleep. Sometimes I have to spend the night in a public restroom to be able to keep up with learning progress. He even took advantage of studying during mealtimes. Time passes by. The final exam has arrived. An excellent student completed the exam very early. Chris also submitted his assignment soon after. In the elevator, practitioner Kia said, "The questions in the exam are very easy." Chris chimed in with Theo, "How do you see the questions about the chart?" "It's too easy to have discussion questions on the back. The topic makes it so difficult for me." "How do you answer the discussion question A on the back?" Exit the company gate. When Chris was planning to go out to meet a customer, the boss wanted to borrow money from him to pay for a taxi. Looking inside the wallet, there's only $7.58. He held the $5 bill and hesitated for a moment. Finally, I still gave it to the boss. He helped the boss solve immediate difficulties, but I lost food money for several days because the exam takes up too much time. So father and son missed the queue at the shelter. because $5 was loaned to the boss. During dinner, Chris could only try to suppress his hunger and forced a smile. That night, father and son slept on the subway. In a deadlock situation, no more flickering light. Chris had to sell his blood. This time in addition to my own blood. Then he no longer thought Ray had anything he could sell. After receiving $24 from blood sales, he immediately spent $8 to buy a light bulb, new fluorescent, to have a place to stay. Every day, they have to crowd with other homeless people. Chris feels very guilty, especially for his mother's little son. It's because of me that you're leaving, isn't it, Dad? What? Don't think like that, because your mother left because of her, not because of the child. Do you understand? You are a good child. After taking care of my son, Chris started repairing the fog machine again. Install the new light bulb. He gently turned on the power switch. At that moment, the light of the fog scanner lit up, illuminates the whole room, like a ray of sunlight penetrating the darkness. The doctor came to buy the due scanner on time. A month's living allowance is also available. That evening, they stopped lining up at the shelter, but choose to stay in a motel, maybe because I'm no longer used to the soft bed. So father and son fell asleep on the sofa again. Actually, where Ray sleeps is no longer important. The important thing is that his son is always by his side. The next day after work, father and son went to the beach to relax. All the noise and difficulties seemed to have left them. The father and son finally showed their long-lost smile. Today is the last day of the real period. Training lasts 6 months. People you know on the football field. Brought to you. 31 transactions, however, at this moment. He was in a very nervous state for this internship. Unlike childhood tests, it has no chance of a remake. This is the decisive moment to change fate. But it went by very quickly. In the restroom, he met the human resources director. The director praised his performance. Listen, regardless of the result, he practiced very well. Chris, I'm serious. Take care. Chris is busy. Thank you to those who supported him. Then the manager called him over. He knew that everything was finally clear. In the past 6 months, he has put in a lot of effort. And now, will those efforts force him to leave? Continue to live a difficult life? Or will lead you to a new life journey? I think I should wear a shirt today. It's the last day. Thank you very much. But please continue wearing it tomorrow, okay? Because tomorrow will be your first day at work, if you want to be a stockbroker here. Do you agree, Chris? Yes, sir, great. We welcome. He held this fateful notice in his hand. His eyes lit up like surging ocean waves. He tried to hold back his tears, but I couldn't hide the wet corners of my eyes. A lie also has to cry twice in its life. When he was about to leave the room, then the boss called him back and pay me back the $5 I borrowed earlier. This is not just about paying off debt, but also recognition for his work. All the bitterness and 7 defeats, all those long, cold, and lonely nights, has now found a place to stay. If there really is magic in this world, then that is another name for effort. Mr. Lau, leave the company. Tears welled up in the crowd of people. Raise your hands high and clap for yourself. This moment, the seeds have finally bloomed. Bears fruit on the land, barren in the heart. This moment, happiness has finally knocked on my door. He eagerly ran to his son's school. He hugged his son tightly and did not want to let go. From now on, he will not let his son have to endure any further suffering. This is a true story. Until 1987, Chris founded his own investment company. And when Chris Gangner, prototype of the story, meet your younger self again, for a brief moment, that moment was like a gentle caress of time. Witness the journey of pursuing happiness. Finally meet reality. At first watching the movie, I didn't understand anything. I saw myself in it. We often wonder what happiness is. Where is it? Here is the answer. That many people spend their lives searching for. However, happiness will not fall from the sky. Surprisingly happy. It is also difficult to last long and is not appreciated. For people with limited economic conditions, like us, Wanting to change the status quo is truly challenging. It's not because we lack diligence, but because we are often constrained by a series of force majeure factors. God always finds ways to challenge those who strive. We are clearly striving to pursue happiness, but every time I see this spark of hope, then reality is extinguished. But human life, quickly, the God of luck will knock on the door of our hearts. Not just once. The real test lies when the knock on the door comes, whether we are ready or not. If we don't pay attention until we wake up, then the opportunity has passed. Heaven has long given food to birds, but don't throw it into the nest as well. Just like our lives. Although it was a disaster, but the more difficult it is, the more you should not have to overcome it yourself. A gentleman hides his talent inside himself and waits for the right moment to act. Honing yourself. Then there will be a day so that we can see the meaning of perseverance. People who strive to run forward, good things will happen in the end that they expected. Today's story ends here. Thank you for watching the movie. How do you like this movie? Please comment down below.